Hello, everyone. This is the Nate and Andrew podcast. I'm Nate,
I'm Andrew.
and today we're going to talk about some more of the craziness in the world. And yeah, not too much of a status update there. Same stuff, new day.
That it is indeed. So,
So I don't know about you, Andrew. Um, I know we've talked about this a lot of times, but I have family members who are just absolutely bleeding heart liberals. I'm talking left of Mao, and they've went and they've bought themselves firearms recently.
yeah, that's
And I swear to
something that's
God,
happening more and more.
every time I try to chill out about things, I get some crazy new status update, like my bleeding heart liberal family members. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just what they are. Getting guns. And I know that if these people are going that far off of the beaten path of their constitution, their personal constitutions, maybe I should be more worried than I am. But I also can't really be bothered to be worried right now because I've got a job, trying to live my life, and I really don't think that I'm powerful enough to have a lot of influence in the average American's life.
Yeah, all that's so okay. So the reason I disagree with the whole like liberals are are like water, right? They'll fill whatever container you put them in. Basically, you're basically saying like I have a moral stance on things, and therefore when I believe things and then have to like they haven't reframed anything. They're just like bad stuff happened, need gun now, and then like as soon as the shooting's over, they'll be like right back to guns are evil, right? Like you're assuming they have logic, right? This is the same group of people that said we have to close down everything because if one person dies, everyone's gonna die, and it's gonna be the tragedy of the tragedies. But if you're protesting for things I care about, all of a sudden it cures the disease. These are not logical people.
Okay, well, I don't know if that's true. And the reason I would say that is so Midwest, so Montana area, sorry, not Montana, Minnesota area, some of the smaller communities, right? They don't even bother locking their doors. People get irritated with me for locking the doors when I go and visit. But
Um,
when they
yeah.
have when they start to get higher populations, or when they have some, for lack of a better word, hooligans coming through the area, they start locking their doors because it only takes one or two break-ins for them to realize, maybe I should lock this door. And as far as I can tell, that's been kind of ingrained in a lot of these people's minds who hadn't locked their doors for pretty much their entire generation. So I would assume that if people are worried about meeting violence in their life, they would get a gun and they'd probably keep it, and they probably wouldn't forget. Um, Most hikers I know carry bear spray, even though that they have never had to spray a bear with it because they just heard about bears, and it's a pretty reasonable fear to have.
Yeah, I know, but like you keep using logic. Like
I am
these
sorry.
people are illogical. Like look, it's going to take a while for like the whole whatever's going on stuff to wear off, but eventually when the riots die down in 2022, they'll go right back to we need to ban all guns and give our guns to Hitler because they'll still be calling Trump Hitler at that point. Now there's a chance that a lot more has changed by then, which is, considering how weird 2020's been, I'm not. Yeah, it. We'll see. We'll see what happens, and I don't know. Things are going to be good, different going forward for sure, because it's like this was 20. It the coronavirus was the next decade's 9/11, right? There's like some
Yeah, pretty much.
major event that they have to do to like mark the next decade and like push through like a massive um, psyop kind of thing, and this was the big one,
Can you define psyop real quick?
psychological operation.
That's what I thought you meant.
So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens here. Um,
So I got to say this real quick. So I moved from Seattle area to Rapid City, South Dakota, and I got to say it is crazy how much lower the anxiety level here is on average. People just aren't that worried here, and it is a breath of absolute fresh air.
Yeah,
First
because
night I
it's the
was
people
here,
that make everything.
yep. Well, yeah, I mean, that is definitely true. But like the first night I was here, I went to a bar, then I went to another bar, talking to a lot of people. No one's worried about social distancing. Um, yeah, everyone's just living their life as normal, other than the schools, which are not having classes, which are all online.
Hmm. Kind of
Maybe
surprised they
throw on
agreed to
group
that.
tests.
But I don't know. Maybe there's more like homeschool people in South Dakota than I think of. So like the few people that are kind of scared of the virus are the ones that are still sending their kids to public school kind of thing. Yeah.
Um, well, for me, I'm just talking about the colleges here, the universities,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm not
My bad.
sure about the lower schools.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice. It'd be nice to live in a society like that. I mean, like you don't have to wear the mask. Like yesterday, I went to dinner with my family, and my whole family's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do if they don't let you in without the mask?" Nobody said anything. It's, I've had it, I've had it where people have said stuff like a handful of times out of all the times I've gone places. Like it's not something that
Sure.
happens very often, and it's just yeah. And a lot of the times, the activities that you're doing, like with these masks, like if you actually worried about the virus, you wouldn't be going to these places to begin with. Like we went to an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. You don't go like you're there's it's just a breeding ground for potential disease if that's how you believe this whole thing works. So like there's if you were actually worried about the whole thing, you would never in a million years go there. But
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. Like, if you're worried about the bubonic plague and you're way back in the day, you're probably not going to go to the market unless you absolutely have to, even if you had a mask.
yeah, but like nowadays it's even better because like you don't even have to go to the market. You can just call someone and have them bring you the stuff. And then you can stay in your little box and you can disinfect it the instant it gets there and cover yourself in gloves. And like by the way, all this super unhealthy, don't do it. But like you can take all these extreme measures nowadays to make sure that you are social distanced and basically put in isolation by your own free will to the max. And nobody does it. One, because we're humans and we need social interaction, so that's reason number one. And then two is because um words. Oh, it's because people don't believe it. So and I know. I need to stop talking about the stupid virus, but
Oh, well, I mean, it is kind of relevant right now, just a little bit. But yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. This is my first work at home job. I've been just logging into my computer, going to another computer, and doing my work. It's a little bit surreal because my computer is actually being operated at the facility that I would be working at.
oh, you're doing a remote desktop?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
And yeah, no, it's
So
it's
wait, why
kind of
did you
surreal.
move then? Just because you wanted to
Well,
live in South Dakota?
well, no, well, partially. So what happened was they told me that they wanted me to go and work in person at the Rapid City facility, which was totally fine. Um, I didn't really see the benefit of it because I was getting all my work done, doing pretty good. But they believe that it is necessary to go into work to get your work done. However, with that being said, they told me to move out to Rapid City by a date, so I did. And then Monday, the day after I moved there, they told me, yeah, by the way, you did not need to move to Rapid City because we're just going to be working at home for another half year.
Classic.
I was like,
Well,
guys, my God, how much time and money I just wasted. But I mean, all right, I'm actually kind of happy to be in Rapid City.
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I
But
would
yeah, no, it's a crazy world. You can actually do virtually everything you need to do online without being anywhere physical. Well, in specific locations physically. I could
yeah,
be in my
it's
boxers at home working, and I guarantee you that that would not fly in the office.
probably not. I'm gonna take a wild guess there.
They could probably sue him for discrimination, though.
Maybe, yeah, that's true.
It is my God-given right to work in my boxers, as Jesus said. It's in there somewhere.
um, Interesting.
I want to point out that that is what I would call not an argument, but you know,
Yeah, I well, yeah, I'm not discussing, but like the whole like work at home thing has been interesting. Like for me, it's not that weird because like growing up, my mom always did like a work at home thing, and um, like my dad's uh did construction and then he did like IT work and like that's all you can do a work at home with IT and stuff like that. So like it was pretty common for in my family like growing up and stuff like that. So as this has more transitioned, it hasn't been like to me it's like, oh, everybody's just finally caught on that this is great. Uh so that's been kind of interesting.
yeah.
'Cause I'm trying to think. I think my mom's been doing like work at home for like 20 years almost.
If you don't mind me asking, what line of business is she in?
She's a nurse case manager. So basically, she uh what they to have people be in the hospitals less, they make it so they take care of you and stuff like that, but you might need to have some basic checkups from like a nurse and stuff like that, make sure everything's going good. But you don't really need to be in person for that. So they basically just call you, make sure that you have like you got your meds, that you're taking your meds correctly, that you have various things, all your medical ducks in a row. Basically, they just kind of make sure everything's going good, make sure you don't have to get back into the hospital for something. Um, Anything that uh, might help out with that. And so that's what she does. And she was one of the early people that started in that. Like she, when she started doing that major, it was like basically, or not major, but job. It was like basically brand new. So she's been in it since it kind of became a thing. So if
Yeah.
there's any nurses listening to this, that's a career option for you if you like to talk to people on the phone. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that.
but you're at your desk like all day, so that's the trade-off.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't. My big problem is I really like to have separation between physical separation between my mental tasks, if that makes sense. Like when I'm in my room, I want to be sleeping, I want to be getting dressed, I want to have a closet where I have my clothes.
Oh, I got what you're saying.
When
Yeah,
I'm working, I want to be um, in my work environment. Right now in Rapid City, I kind of have everything kind of mashed together here, which isn't bad. It's just not ideal. I like it. It's really nice being around people again, but I'm the kind of guy who I segregate all of my ideas into different boxes inside my head, and I like to have my own spaces for everything.
you heard it here
I would
first.
not
Here,
say
Nathan
it
is
again.
into segregation.
Oh, ha ha. Yeah, yeah. Well, there you have it. Mental segregation. How dare I?
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much all I have to say about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably should have prepared for this a little bit better, but that's okay. It's
Oh,
been a little bit since we had talked. Um,
no, you're totally fine.
have you looked at the um Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing at all?
Yeah, I've listened to a couple segments on it. I don't know. I don't think it's as big of a deal as everyone else makes it out to be. And the reason for this, like, let's say that there's a very conservative or constitutional, uh, shoot, constitutional replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And let's say that she really wants to, or he really wants to overturn Roe versus Wade. Okay, well, let's say it does get overturned. Well, as far as I can tell, then everything goes back to the states. Places like Washington, California, Oregon, all those blue states, they're all going to be still in favor of abortion, and it's not going to go away in those states. And the states like, I don't know, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, I would say that they probably would go away, but yeah, it just goes back to states' rights, and I'm all about states' rights. More dispersion of power, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think like Roe v. Wade is really even the question, because as it was, I watched a stream the other day from Viva Free where they had the four lawyers on. So it was him. Viva Free is a lawyer, but he's in Canada, so he's not necessarily as up to date on all the laws in the United States. And
It
then there
is.
was uncivil law, Barnes law, and Nate law.
I
The
like that law.
Nate the lawyer, I think is his YouTube. Anyway, I'll
Good
link
man.
it below because it was a pretty good stream. Um, and one thing they mentioned in there was the fact that uh, it doesn't like Roe v. Wade. You only have like two people that are gonna vote to repeal it, and if you get like a super conservative person in there, like it's gonna bring it up to three at most. So
Doesn't
like
the vice president break ties, or is that wrong?
vice president breaks ties in the Senate.
Okay, my bad.
So um, yeah, so like Roe v. Wade isn't even because of who has been appointed and because the Republicans like pointing the worst freaking judges ever. They've appointed some good ones, but like in terms of like actually having like the values that conservatives line up with, like conservatives are so hit and miss as to whether or not they get a good judge. Um, Whereas that's not necessarily the case. Like it doesn't seem to be the case on the Democratic side um, as much. Though, what is it? Sotomayor, I think, who was appointed by Obama. She has like one quality that's like really good. Like she's a crazy leftist, like type person, but like she's really good on civil rights or something. Or there was like some topic she was really good on that like ended up backfiring against the state super hard, which was kind of funny.
Okay. Do you remember which one that was?
I remember she sided with Gorsuch on it, and I
Okay.
think it had something to do with like liberties. I think like I think it might be one of those things that if no, okay, she might be one of the votes where like the lockdowns and stuff like that. If it got to the Supreme Court, she might vote for that. Don't quote me on that because I don't remember if that's exactly the topic. But like in general, when they when a leftist gets a vote or like gets a someone in there, like they're far more like how that like Ruth Bader Ginsburg is literally just a activist basically, and they got her out of the Supreme Court, and like that was back when you could stuff it with a um filibuster 60 vote thing, and that didn't happen. So I don't. It's just weird um that that can. It's kind of like a sign of like the conservatives are designed to lose kind of thing, where they just they don't they appoint judges that are going to go against their interests in the long run. And there's several reasons for that. Apparently they have like a think tank. They basically use gatekeepers, right? So they have this gatekeeping think tank that basically only lets like the worst neocon type judges into the pool that the any presidential candidate is going to select, or like any like if you have a Republican president, they're going to select from this think tank's pool of candidates where they're like, look, we went through their stuff, we vetted them, like these are the people that we are on our short list that we think should be appointed. And they usually go off that list, and that list is full of a bunch of people that if you are like a nationalist or a true right-wing type person, uh, do not line up with your values at all. So that's kind of frustrating. Um, but we'll see who he ends up appointing. A lot of people say Amy, Amy Cohen Barrett. I can't say her name right now. Uh, Amy Cohen Barrett. I think that's right. Anyway, um, and yeah, apparently she's like a neocon through and through kind of thing. Like if a vote came to the Supreme Court where it was like were the lockdowns legal, she's gonna side with the United States. Like she's not the judge you'd want in there, and it's we'll see if she ends up getting appointed or not. There's a couple other judges that are better than her in terms of like their record, but have more identity check boxes that will make it hard for the left to oppose them. So we'll see who
Oh
those is.
yeah, yeah.
Actually, he's supposed to announce it today. Let's see if he announced it or not. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, no, the identity stuff is pretty interesting. I don't really understand it a whole lot. So, as far as I can tell, the left's argument is mostly, well, traditionally it has been, it's ridiculous to judge people by traits that they cannot control themselves, right? You didn't choose to be how tall you are. I didn't choose to be how tall I am, or my skin color, or my eye color, or any of that stuff. And yeah, no, if from the left's argument, which is not totally correct, it's that okay, fine. We're all essentially a bunch of cars, right? And yeah, fine. Some of us are pickups, some of us are sports cars, some of us are these little nonsense Mazda cars that I may or may not own. Um, and the only difference is, other than our natural capabilities, which we're born or not born with, or we develop, is the color of our paint job. And if that is the argument, then I don't understand why it's important at all. And my opinion has always been closer to the opinion of Martin Luther King over Malcolm X.
oh,
So
okay. I think I
yeah,
see what you're saying. Like, why does skin
well,
tone matter?
yeah. Well, what I'm saying is if you're going to go to a car lot, right? You're not going to say, I want a red car. Maybe you prefer a red car because red cars are just cooler.
There are definitely people
But
that say I want a red car.
yeah, no, I get that. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic.
Yeah, I get it.
But, as long as I have, like, for example, my favorite car ever, well, favorite vehicle ever is an old J10, J10 Jeep, made in the 60s and 70s. At least the body style I want. And I couldn't care less if I bought one that was, blue or green or red. I just want the dang car, and yeah, I'm probably gonna throw a new paint job on it because it's ancient. But yeah, it doesn't change the internals inside. But then again, we are all really different. I know that that's terrible, a terrible heretical thing to say. But yeah, I mean, like, look at the Japanese. They're relatively short. Chinese are relatively short. The Danes are the tallest people in the world. The Samoans are just these massive, uh, massive people. I mean, we can generalize a group of people generally, and that's what I'm saying. Not that you couldn't have a tall Chinese person,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I mean, we are all different. It just to me it doesn't matter that much, especially since I lean more to the anarchy side of things.
Can you hear my dog barking?
Very slightly.
Okay. All right. Good. This she stopped. All right. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. What was okay? So let's take the Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X discussion. So
Sure.
Malcolm X believed in having different societies, and Martin Luther King was like, we can all be one society, right? Did I sum that
Yeah,
up
yeah.
correctly?
It's the difference between what is it called? Nationalism and civic nationalism.
Yeah. So, like, it's not. Here's the mistake that a lot of people. It's not about your skin tone. Like, it's race is a superset of nation.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a bunch of nationalities under the moniker of white, and not all of them are compatible. Now, because most of them fall within Europe and the legacy and tradition of Western civilization, they uh, they generally get along pretty well because they have uh, the foundations of they share foundations of a Roman legal tradition, a Greek philosophical tradition, and the Christian faith.
I don't know, I gotta strongly disagree with you on that, and the reason is Europe has historically been a war-torn, messed up place.
Yes, yeah, and I don't disagree with that. Like, yeah, they fought a bunch, and I'm not saying, but like, that doesn't mean that the pillars of those societies weren't built on those things. They had different
Okay,
ways of
okay, yep.
interpreting it. They had different views on stuff. They went to war for various reasons, mainly to acquire more land or colonies or things like that. But they until the 20th century, almost none of the wars were philosophically based. It was all like economically based.
Sure, yeah.
Well, actually, that's not true. There, um, there was some religious slash philosophical, like the 30 Years' War was a religious war, but like that was during the Reformation, where there was a major split in how, uh, basically everyone was under the Catholic Church, and then that split happened, and there was a massive, basically war and conflict over that, which is a natural thing that's going to happen when something that massive happens. I guess it didn't happen when the Eastern and Western, or like when the uh, what was it? Eastern Orthodoxy and Western Catholicism or Greek or Roman Catholicism split. But one of the reasons for that is because they kind of each already had their set zone of controls kind of thing. So they're just kind of like, look, we work in this area, you guys work in that area, and they're all kind of cool with that. And then on top of that, you had a much more relevant and pressing threat of Islam that was kind of at the doorsteps at that point when that happened, if I remember correctly. Because
Yeah.
let me look at the date for when this schism happened. Uh, docs.
Yeah, no, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the way I've understood it is generally one government, one nation
Yeah.
invades another country, and the purpose of that oftentimes is, or generally is, to take control over the tax base of another nation,
Um.
tax base and resources.
Yes and no.
Like the
Um.
Japanese, the reason they invaded China was to get all their crazy good natural resources.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's resource based. Well, it's kind of funny because it's like when you think about some aspects of it, it's kind of like a self defeating thing. That's like one of the reasons I've been thinking about this kind of a lot, and it's really made uh conquest video games less appealing because I'm like, but there's no reason to do this kind of thing. Um, oh, to get back to the Roman Catholic split. So the split happened in 1054 AD, and um, at
I
that
thought it
time,
happened with Martin Luther.
I believe at that time the Moors were like basically conquered all of Spain, so they had bigger issues. Um, what were you saying?
Um, I said I thought the split happened like between the Christendom and turning all of Europe into nation states happened when Martin Luther nailed his thesis to the church walls.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's
I'm
there's
totally
two
incorrect about
splits.
that.
There's two splits.
Okay.
So there's
Oh, I
one
thought
in
there's only one.
1054 where you get East the Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, and Roman Catholic, right? So
Okay.
before that,
Yeah.
it's just Christianity. Um, uh, and there was kind of two different traditions developing in the Eastern side and from the papacy, and so like this basically just these developments over time they finally were like we're different enough and they kind of split, and then the Reformation happened, and then that was in 1500 something. But Oh, to get back to the self-defeating video game thing. So, uh, the whole idea, like, so like Japan's conquest of China, part of it's to do with like, they think that they should rule this area, and maybe they wanted more space for their people to live and stuff like that. But part of it was just to get more war supplies, which once you win the war, you don't need, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, the Japanese were trying to take over Asia, as far as I could tell. Maybe I'm very
Yeah,
badly misinformed about that.
but it's I'm trying to think of how to. So it's like we need uh, uh like okay, a better example might be like Alexander, where his troops were finally like, why are we fighting? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, why are we doing that? Like, no one kind of, but like, so the whole system goes, okay, well, we have this amount of territory, and uh, it to protect it, we need this big of an army. So, but we want a bigger army, so we're going to take over this other territory so that we can get a bigger tax base so that we can afford a bigger army. But now that we have a bigger territory, we need a bigger army, so we need to conquer more area. And so it's just like this self-defeating plan where it's like you have to
Well,
conquer
yeah,
everything, and even then it's probably not enough. And then on top of that, you add to the fact that you have nations of people. So like you conquer these people, and it's like, well, you can't integrate them into your society. Like you, if you integrate them into your society, you don't, like, let's say Japan took over China, right? And they decided to meld or whatever, then like Japan ceases to exist. You have a different group of people because you
yeah,
don't have just like the the developments of the Japanese culture. You have the fusion of Japan and China, and that hybrid results in something. It's basically where we get Anglo-Saxon, right? You had the Anglos and the Saxons, they merged, they became a new thing that we call Anglo. It's still hybridized today, and that happened like 1,500 years ago, I think,
sure.
or I think it happened in the 700s. So it's just like kind of crazy. As to what was that point you made earlier, like the war thing?
Made a couple.
I can't remember what you said.
The purpose of war is to take over the tax base, and I don't know. Sometimes it's to, well, as far as I can tell, it's usually to take over the tax base, but you have to have a good reason to go to war. So, I mean, for example, part of the reason that America went to war against itself in the Civil War was because of slavery. I mean, that was part of the reason, but it's also
That was
because
the
you're going to lose.
justification, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's of course the justification. If you don't have, you have to have a moral high ground for fighting. If you don't have a moral high ground for fighting, you won't get people to fight.
True.
And yeah, I mean, just because someone says that their intention is one thing, it does not mean that their intention is that thing. Yeah, there actually were quite a bit of states' rights problems going on in the Civil War that are kind of glossed over. I mean, granted, slavery definitely bad, but you know,
Yeah, I don't
but
know.
yeah, I mean,
There's something grabbled about that history. I don't know what. There's some, but there's more
all
going
the
on there
history
than people
is, you know,
people are led to believe.
oh, history is so much more complicated. So, I mean, like, look at World War II, right? I mean, we had known that the Soviets were the worst people ever, at least the worst government ever. I mean, we may disagree with that to an extent. They were committing a lot of human atrocities. Their gulags were pretty bad. Their first 5 year plan, if I'm not mistaken, killed like, I think historians agree it's between, I want to say at the very low end it was like 13 million, and the very high end it was like the 30 millions of people. Don't take my word for that. Fact check yourself, audience. Yeah, we knew these people were pretty bad. And then we hear that the Germans are systematically slaughtering like 6 million people of an ethnic group. And that's bad. And I'm not saying that either of those things are not bad, but I'm suggesting that why would you choose one side over the other? If
Yeah.
we need to fight this power because this power is clearly evil, so we need to side with this other power who is also clearly very evil. So, I mean, history is just a lot more complicated than we give it credit for. The Zimmerman telegram in World War One.
That
There's
one's
just a lot of real weirdness that goes on in history, and I think there's generally
that one
ulterior
seems like a red
motives.
herring, man. Like, really? Like,
What do you mean?
just the idea that Germany like sent this telegram and then like it was somehow intercepted, which by the way their like lines had been cut for a long time. The fact that they hadn't figured out that their telegraph lines had been cut, I don't know, seems kind of weird to me. Um
Never underestimate the power of human incompetence.
sure, but it's like an incompetence on a level that like sure, Kaiser Wilhelm II wasn't the greatest, but the military engine behind World War One Germany was the best in the world. Like they didn't have the navy, but like their ground forces were their generals. Uh, some of them were kind of outdated and stuff like that, but like they they were the ones that actually cracked the code on how to win the war, and they just kind of got powered after the U.S. got in the war. But
Well, of course,
like this whole like
Fresh
idea
Army.
that they send this thing off to they send the Zimmerman telegram, and then they just like fess up to the fact that like it's like, oh yeah, you caught our intelligence stuff, we definitely sent that. It's just like the whole thing seems suspicious.
Oh yeah, no, it's extremely suspicious. I don't. Some things can be too perfect to be true.
That's kind of where it is.
And asking the Mexican government to declare war on the American government, that's just that.
Well, that's not
It'd be
that
like
weird.
asking Canada to attack America. It's just
Well, I mean, there was the Mexican
not
American
a thing.
War, and they took all of California during that war. They took all of Texas had already declared independence, but they ended up Texas when the war concluded. Texas joined the Union. They got all of California, and they got all of our southwestern states.
Oh, I actually didn't realize that they were that successful.
Yeah, it was basically the that whole area that in southwest uh, America that is currently like going has like a lot of illegal immigration problems. Well, that used to be Mexico. um,
Yeah, yeah, I'm well aware of that. Mexico used to be just an enormous country.
yeah, so we took all that in the Mexican American War, and they wanted it back. So like Germany basically gave them an option, and that's only 70 years, 80 years since that event. Like that's still within somebody's lifetime.
Yeah, with that being said, though, Mexico was going through some serious political problems at that time,
When
and
isn't Mexico going through political problems?
yeah, that's a damn good point. But I don't know, for the idea of Mexico being able to challenge the might of America, which granted we didn't have a big military at that time.
We had like no military.
No, we didn't, but we also we had John Moses Browning on our side, right? We had some of the best equipment in the world.
No, we didn't.
I disagree. We had like the 1919 machine gun and all that at that time,
Okay,
or at least we would have had. No, we had the 1917, which is a water cooled variant. But anyway, I digress.
okay. What are the dates on those? 1919 or 1917. That's the end of the war, dude. We get
Oh,
involved in
sorry.
1916. The Zimmerman telegram's like 1915.
Okay, okay, fine, fine. What I'm suggesting is that we had some of the.
America was just getting its infrastructure up and going. It like didn't have the infrastructure that like it didn't have like the World War II infrastructure to switch into total war mode like we did in World War II. We didn't have that.
Okay,
World War
yeah.
One was the impetus to get a bunch of that infrastructure built, but it didn't
Okay.
exist.
Andrew, with this being said, we were selling arms to both sides of World War One. We were selling a lot of the big guns to them, as far as I can understand, unless I'm incorrect.
Yeah, we were doing that, sure, but that doesn't mean that we are. Um, so okay, we can produce a lot of bullets, right? And um, we're probably I don't exactly know in terms of like heavy stuff what we're producing. Um, but like in terms of like we didn't have well okay, I when was Springfield was 1913, right? Springfield rifle, bolt action.
Yeah. It was a variant of the Mauser. It was a Mauser action rifle. It was considered one of the best of its time.
Yeah, so basically we copied the Mauser like everybody did back then because it's the best bolt action that's ever been made. Um and and so we have that like basically our military in 1911, 19 like leading up to World War 1 looked a lot more like your like they were a frontier army. They were like controlling stuff uh like they were still taking care of some Native American problems here and there. They were it would have looked a lot more like a Civil War, post Civil War frontier management type army. With I mean, sure the uniforms had I think modernized by that point, and things like that. But and you got to remember, if we're sending stuff to both sides of the war and then we get involved in the war, sure maybe we're not sending stuff to Germany anymore, but there's not necessarily even a guarantee that we stop sending stuff to Germany. Um,
Yo,
and
one sec. I want to point out, I should just look this up. John Moses Browning's first machine gun, the M1895 Colt Browning machine gun, also known as the Potato Digger. Um, yeah, it was an air-cooled machine gun, so you don't have it's fairly light for the time, as far as I can tell from just looking at it. But yeah, we did have some pretty darn good equipment or readily producible equipment.
look, all I'm
So
saying is
no, that's neither here nor there.
if if we were producing all the arms for the war, there's no way our productive capacity wasn't tapped out at that point. And reading, if you read the crash of 1921 or the Forgotten Depression of 1921 is the name of the book. Like it talks about how usually why there's a depression after a war is because all like there's all this demand for all this material and then the war ends and they cancel all those orders, right? And so you see this drop in demand. And so like people that were investing in infrastructure and stuff like that to meet these new demands all of a sudden are overextended because there's no that money isn't going to be coming in anymore. Um so our productive capacity when we join the war is already tapped out. It's already probably maxed to meet the demands of the war that we're already funding.
So wait, I hear what you're saying, but for example, a very recent example, the Chinese had made some medical equipment. I think they're shipping like masks or whatever overseas, and they had turned around ships that were going to deliver goods that the Chinese people believe that, or the Chinese government believed that the Chinese people needed. So my suggestion is if I had a big shipment of ordnance or arms or whatever the hell, and my country had just been ordered, I would say, okay, well, we are not going to give that to Germany or the English or the French. We're actually going to keep that here because all of a sudden we have a fight on home soil here.
But you don't have a fight on home soil.
I'm suggesting that if you did, so like let's say we did end up getting into a war with the Mexican government, and we were going to be shipping a lot of stuff overseas, we would not ship that stuff overseas. That would be suicide.
Yeah, that's why they wanted Mexico to get involved.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So that we
Um,
could
yeah.
finally tip the balance and have a material advantage.
Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, maybe I'm just looking at things through more of a modern view, where I just don't think America could be invaded from pretty much anywhere.
They can't
Um,
to a certain degree.
yeah.
Like we get along. Well, I mean, we are being invaded to a certain degree. Like you know, people come across the border every day without being stopped.
No, I understand that, but I'm suggesting that it would be impossible for a standing army to invade America, and I would have assumed that it would be that way 100 years ago as well, or I guess over 100 years ago now.
Um,
I mean, for example, the Germans didn't
yeah.
have much of a navy to speak of. That they had like some old school submarines,
Uh,
and they had
no, the
a
German,
navy
well, the
that they.
German Navy is not going to be as good as the British Navy, but it's definitely better than the U.S. Navy. It's the second best Navy in the world at the start of World War One.
Well, yes, with that may be true, and I'm sure it was a very good navy. I'm sure it was great. But my suggestion is being able to transport enough soldiers from Germany or Europe to America to have a good chance of actually attacking America. I would suggest that that would not be possible.
Yeah, they weren't like the German Navy. Okay, the German naval buildup is what triggered World War One, and the reason it started when it did is because it had to start then so that the British weren't in threat of being overtaken by the Germans, which considering their build plan, like that was probably never going to happen. But if Germany had figured out early, here's the thing: a potential alternate history situation is where Germany doesn't. So one of the onuses and triggers for World War One was the fact that Germany decided they wanted to build the and have basically be on par with the amount of dreadnoughts, which was the brand is basically the a battleship,
I
a
know.
brand new ship that made all the old ships obsolete. They wanted to have as many as Britain did, I think. Um, so that was their plan. So that threatened Britain, and they really ramped up their production of these new dreadnoughts. Um,
Okay.
if Germany instead had decided, you know what we're gonna do, because World War One, you don't have radar technology. It's not nearly sophisticated. The main way you take care of um, U-boats and stuff like that was with mines. If they had decided to go full U-boat option, all of a sudden Britain and people didn't know this at the time, so there's no way for them to predict this, but Britain would have probably not felt as threatened because they're like, okay, these submarines, uh, maybe radar gets developed earlier or something like that, but like they probably wouldn't have been as threatened if they did a massive submarine buildup, which they had a lot of submarines compared to other nations, but versus the dreadnought, like the capital ship type um, thing. So if they just decided to go full U-boat thing and maybe some escorts and some enough other ships to kind of protect and create like safe waters and threaten shipping lanes with those, maybe they wouldn't have been as threatened, and Germany could have had a buildup, and then if World War One breaks out at a certain a little bit different time period or maybe the same time period, but they're able to invest all the money and resources that they invested into the capital ships that they did that they invested into U-boats and worked on their uh, naval doctrine to incorporate U-boats in a very effective manner right out the gate, it could have had a major impact on how the war played out overall, and it might have been given them enough of the edge because it almost gave them the edge with like kind of the disorder that they had to be able to get their stuff together and win the war before you even have an America get involved.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know enough about it to speak fully on it, but yeah, that makes sense for me from a superficial understanding that I have right now.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's World War One's is fascinating. Like it's horrifying. It is, in my opinion, the most horrific war that's ever been fought that I can think of. Um, just because like the conditions were worse than any war I can think of. Like just the amount of like
The amount of
abuse and
garbage you had to deal with. Ugh.
yeah, just tactics were like not developed properly, things like that. Like they eventually got there, but it took a couple of years of just killing people in droves to figure this crap out. Um, and it's, I don't know, it's interesting. Um,
Yeah, no, I agree with that. One of my favorite sayings, I can't remember who said it, was, and I'm paraphrasing. When I went to war, I imagined myself charging up a hill with a sword, and in reality, it was some jerk a mile away pushing a button and blowing me up, and I never had a chance.
yeah, it sounds about accurate.
Yeah, no, and that's pretty crazy. I don't know. Like I've read a couple times now. I've read All Quiet on the Western Front,
Mm. I think I meant
and
to
I
read that,
gotta
but I never
say,
did.
say it again.
I meant to read that book and I never did.
Yeah, I've got it in English and I've got it in German. No. Anyways, but no, it's just crazy. Like you had mortars back then. You had gas. You had uh, you just had all sorts of nastiness. You had disease. You had gangrene. You had rats. By some accounts, wolves were a problem on the Eastern Front between the ax or shoot, I guess you'd call it
The Entente.
the Entente
There's
and
the
the
Entente versus the
Allies.
Central Powers.
Okay, my bad. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's just crazy. Really nasty stuff. And I hope I never have to go through that. Um, but then again, I would rather go through it than have the next generation go through it.
Yeah, I I don't think World War One tactics are ever coming back, but they could, I guess.
No, I'm not suggesting World War One tactics in general. I'm just talking about a massive, horrifying war like it
Well,
happened back in the day.
I'm just thinking like trench warfare. Like, what would it take to get that to come back in a meaningful way? And if
You'd
we,
have to get rid of anything air powered. That's what you'd have to do.
yeah, so yeah, probably not then. Because the thing is, by the time like, because you'd have to have not have air power, and then on top of that, you would have like, but the armies would also have to be big enough to make digging a trench that basically creates a fortification that's around a country
Sure.
worthwhile. And that's just not. If you're conducting warfare on that scale, you're gonna have the funds to be able to afford aircraft.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably never gonna. It's a very unique situation. Uh, but
Yeah, no, I don't know. One of the crazy things that I can think of. So I don't know about you. I used to mess around with Arduinos a bit. Had a couple classes on them in school. My first big project I did was I made a little Sentry paintball. No, I'm sorry, airsoft turret. And the reason I made that is because why wouldn't I want to launch some BBs at some of my friends because I thought it was cool and funny.
I would
Mine
laugh.
wasn't even that good. Mine was remote controlled, so I had to. I pretty much made myself an Xbox controller where I could pan and I could I don't know I could rotate it around all axes, and
Gotcha.
I'd have to press a button to get it to shoot, which was pretty cool. However, mine wasn't super impressive. A lot of people make theirs so they're fully autonomous, and so they can even distinguish between colors. Like they only will shoot someone with a red shirt or a white shirt or whatever. Someone wearing glasses.
Yeah, get those four
Um,
eyes.
yeah, those damn people. Although I am definitely in that category. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no. To me though, like that was really cool, but that's also a bit eye opening for me because me being a total scrub, being very new to programming, was able to, without very much difficulties, produce something that I don't know. I guess I probably could have beefed it up, changed it around a bit, and I probably could have done something like mount a real firearm to it. And sentry turrets are very real nowadays. And technology is just too good now for a guy with a rifle to be worth all that much anymore.
I disagree.
Why?
Um, because technology can be a handicap, especially if people rely on it overly, way too much. So you can have your whole setup right, where you're like, okay, I have this house, and I got my sentry turrets all over the place, and I'm good to go. Nobody can get me. And then some dude comes in and he hacks the whole thing, and then you walk out and you get shot by your own sentry turrets, and then he just takes all your stuff.
No, I mean, yeah, that is possible, I suppose. The way I did it, it would not have been possible to hack, but not unless he was in my laptop, which, and I suppose that could be hacked. So yeah, I guess that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, you got your remote desktop, right?
Yes, I do.
So you just remote desktop in, and voila. And I mean, like,
Voila.
obviously he's gonna have to figure out a way to get in there, but like, if he can get in there somehow, there's a lot you can do. But I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of times it requires you to download some like really dumb virus thing where it's like, you know, Nigerian prince wants to give you $10 million. Man, those Nigerian princes.
Dude, they just want to give their money away.
Yeah, they're sad no one's taking them up on their offer.
I know, right? It's the worst. Oh, yeah, but I don't know. For the most part, like my day to day life, I'm not really worried about too much of anything. Frankly, I am a pretty type A personality. If you could boil it down to something that far, I think that's a little bit archaic to do such. Um, but with that being said, like I've definitely dealt with anxiety my whole life. I've been anxious about everything, right? I mean, I always have my med kit in my car, always have a couple MREs in there, and yeah, no, I try to go places. Whenever I go somewhere, I try to make sure that I can be taken care of, or at least I can take care of myself. I put away extra money and all that, but I don't know. Like I'm not really worried about like let's say I lose my job tomorrow. That would suck, but I have money saved up, so I'll be okay. Let's say like I break my leg or I don't know I cut something horrible like a femoral artery in my leg. Um, I have a tourniquet. I can totally take care of that. Let's say I get stranded on the highway in a blizzard. Well, I've got extra blankets in my car and a jacket and food and water, so I'd probably be okay. Um, and let's say I get attacked on the street somewhere. Well, I mean, I'm probably going to be okay because the states I tend to be in, I can have a concealed firearm, and I'm just not too worried about anyone attacking me. My big concerns come from places like these crazy movements that are going on in the country right now.
Yeah, but it's
War,
backfiring in a big way.
I don't know. Do you? I'm not convinced that Trump will win the presidency, and I'm not
Oh
convinced
yeah.
that if he does win, that
Dude, I was
it
about to put a
by
five thousand
far.
dollar bet on him winning, but then I realized I don't necessarily trust the place I was gonna put the bet in to pay out. So I was like,
Oh, I see. You really think you would so like if you were to wager with me personally, of course we wouldn't do this. I don't think it's technically legal, but would you bet on Trump right now?
yeah, hundred
Like let's
percent.
say this. Let's say you're betting I don't know, like everything you own. You have to gun to your head. You'd bet on Trump.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I thought about like how much I'm willing to risk just to make a nice payout so I can use it for something else. But
Okay.
yeah, here's the thing. It's also not really much of a risk because I could be wrong on this for sure, but
Sure.
if they try to pull something like getting Biden elected when everyone knows, especially they're going to be in the debates now, dude. Like Biden is going to collapse. He might just die in the middle of the debates.
Ah man, they're gonna give him some amphetamines.
But
He's gonna be messed up there.
it's just like the the fact that
South
there's
Dakota,
debates
marijuana.
seals the deal. Like he's going to be up there, he's going to be like he's just going to they might find a way to make him like okay. There was a pretty crazy thing where like apparently he got like some implants in his face potentially, to basically make him a human puppet. Um, which is
That sounds pretty crazy to me.
it's pretty crazy. I'm not saying that's necessarily true. I haven't looked into it much.
Okay, sure, sure.
But let's say that they do something so where he can at least be functional. Trump is still Trump. He's gonna rope a dope you. He's just gonna wreck him. I don't care who's operating Biden. They don't have the Trump in them. Um,
I don't know, they could drug one of his Big Macs or his Cokes.
okay, that might be a way to get him, but I didn't factor that in. I guess is drugging Trump to throw him off his game. Um, but yeah, so then if Biden does win, I think you're gonna have a massive reaction from the other side, the right wing side, who's like
You're
you
talking about the law-abiding
obviously
side?
what?
Do you really? So sorry, I got to stop you there. Um, so in general, the right side, this is the side that's very law and order. They don't mess with things. They don't go out there and riot. They don't go out there and have a show of force. It just doesn't really happen. You have a couple groups that might do like an open carry rally, but in general, the right side on America, right wing just doesn't really do anything.
True, but what's the okay?
That'd
The
be a
reason they don't do
major
anything is
change.
because they believe in the institutions and that they believe in like the process. What
Okay.
happens when it's so blatantly obvious that the entire thing's corrupt? It's not worth saving. On both sides of the aisle, they believe this. Because the left wing already basically believes this, right? They want to tear the entire thing down, build up a communist state. Now, you want the right wing to believe this. What's the best way to do that? Get Trump, one of the best politicians of all time, who can uh, dance around and outwit and out debate everyone, and just he's quick on his feet, he's witty, uh, all that stuff, and then have someone who literally has dementia beat him in a race. You'd be like, there's absolutely 0% chance that that ever happened legitimately. So then you know the entire thing's bullshit, and then you have two sides that want to tear down the system, and no one supporting the actual system, which means it can't support itself and therefore collapses.
Okay, all right, fine. I hear what you're saying, and I think that is a reasonable argument. However, I think most people they are set in their ways, and they look at things and they say, okay, here's my ballot. If I'm a voting person, then I'm going to vote down the right side or the left side of the aisle because that's what I do. Because I didn't do my research and I don't know whether this person's good or not.
Um, yeah, but like more and more people, like you can only have you've seen this time and time again. Like just take various celebrities or politicians who are like all about the left wing stuff until it shows up on their doorstep. You can only believe your fringe, crazy bullshit lefty equality shit until it shows up on your doorstep and demands that you like submit to it or die. Basically, is how some of this stuff comes off. And then it's like, you know what? Law and Order seems pretty good right about now. And a ton of people are going to be voting Republican because what's the Republican ticket? Law and Order. What's the thing
Yeah,
that the Democrats can't say, despite the fact that they actually have two candidates that outline the Law and Order platform pretty well? They can't say Law and Order because they um it goes against like the vocal the Democrats in their party, like the fringe ideologues on the left.
okay.
So that makes it so that anyone who doesn't want their house to be burned down because they're white to vote uh not for the Democrats.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but man, white doesn't. I mean, white doesn't even mean anything nowadays, and I mean, I don't think it ever really did because
Yeah, it's
like
a
the
political
Germans
weapon.
and the Italians are not interchangeable human beings, nor are the Russians and the English or any other subgroup for that matter. With that being said, I almost feel like we're like as a country, we're watching the same movie, but we're seeing it in different lights. Like for example, I was at a bar and I was discussing politics with people in public, which is probably not a great idea, but I had a couple beers in me, and why not?
Oh yeah,
Um,
always a good time.
yeah, so I'm gonna say things I'm thinking that I shouldn't be saying. But anyways, like no, this guy, like he was talking to me about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. I love that we just refer to him as Kyle. By the way, I think that's hilarious.
Kenosha Cow.
Kenosha Kyle. But no, like that situation, right? I look at that and I'm like, okay, this guy, he's running away from this group of people who's trying to murder him. He put out the fire, a literal dumpster fire. He literally put out a dumpster fire to stop it from being rolled into a gas station. And he had amazing trigger control and all that. Maybe you totally disagree with me about this. I don't think you do. But granted, should he be there? No. Do you have a right to be there? Yes. With that being said, like this person saw it and said, no, this Kyle guy is, for lack of better words, and I am being a little bit hyperbolic, he is Satan's spawn, or these McCloskeys, right? These McCloskeys deserve to have their they deserve to have their guns taken away because these people, these two old frickin' boomer types or whatever the hell they are, they did not have the proper training. Obviously, they did not have the proper discipline that they should have had. Even though most people, probably, I would argue, the vast majority of Americans or people in general, really don't know how to deal with a entire crowd of people showing up on their doorstep.
Yeah, but the courts are a political weapon, and they have
I
been
mean,
for a
yeah,
long time. But it's becoming very, very obvious at this point.
yeah. Or dude, did you see that? I mean, I actually don't think you did see this, but in LA, the Prius, freaking Prius, I should call them Piuses, but anyway, the Prius that drove through a crowd of people didn't hit anyone, just driving through, trying to get through because apparently they didn't know about the riots. Uh, like this Prius got through this crowd, got chased down by other vehicles, people jumping out and smashed the windows and trying to beat him and trying to pull him out of the car and all that. The police literally showed up and arrested the guy who was driving the Prius. I don't know, like I actually am pretty law and order. I think I want to point out too, like just because my views tend to lean more towards anarchist, and also I am rethinking that quite a bit recently here. Although my views, I think, will probably permanently stay more towards personal freedom and personal responsibility. The police are arresting all these people that really don't, I don't know, don't really have any political standing, or at least not showing it publicly. Anyways,
Yeah, but again,
yep.
okay, everything is politicized at this point, right? The police are a political weapon. They are a tool of the left to do as left bids because they get because even though the individual policeman might be like right wing or something like that or conservative, uh, it doesn't matter because the left owns all the key gatekeeping positions. The the head of the police department is going to be a lefty in these lefty cities. The governor is a lefty in these lefty or not governor, the mayor is a lefty in these lefty cities. And those two people tell their people, right wing or not, stand down. Arrest these people. Don't arrest these people. Let these people go. They're the ones that are causing like the the other people are just kind of like they're caught in a weird situation where it's like, okay, well, whether or not I agree with this, it's like what are my options? You know, I okay if I don't, and a lot of them are held there or kind of um, they're they're held there by the carrot of the idea that well, okay, I'll deal with this crap, and in a couple of years I'll get out and I'll get my pension, we'll be good. But like the pension's not there, and more people are realizing it's not coming. So they're either just leaving, as we've seen with a bunch of people, like all the good cops are just like, well, I'm not going to deal with this crap anymore, and they just bail. or
Sure. Yeah,
yeah,
a lot of cops are
yeah.
walking out.
So it's building, right? The and it could boil over. I don't think it's going to, but if Biden got elected, it would kind of potentially be a boiling point, a thing to send everything over the top, because it's like, okay, so we followed all the rules, we've done all this stuff, and it doesn't matter. And on top of that, here's the thing: it might not happen the instant he gets elected, but if he gets elected, let's say Trump gets his Supreme Court pick through, right, and he gets 3, and then Biden gets in there, and the first thing he does is pack the courts to offset all the damage in quotation marks that Trump has done by getting a bunch of federal appointed and all the Supreme Court. So because by the way, there's nothing in the Constitution that says you can't have more Supreme Court justices than we currently have.
I'm
Just
aware.
just in case people aren't aware, I didn't realize
As
that.
if we care about the Constitution anyway, but yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So he gets in there and they followed all the rules and they see the laws being used as a weapon against them and stuff like that. And then he gets in there, he packs the Supreme Court, and they see, okay, there's no options. We voted and you showed us that voting doesn't matter because you stole the election anyway. We believed in law and order, but you packed the courts and took away any sense of actual justice and fairness and law and order. You basically undermined every single institution. Every institution so corrupted it doesn't actually do what it does. At that point, there's no the law and order decision is to actually reinstate law and order by removing the corruption that has permeated the society. And at that point, there's going to be an explosion. Now, I don't think any of that. I think Trump's going to win, and none of this is going to happen. So, and the whole thing might collapse in the future after Trump's gone and things like that. But, um, I just with everything that's going on, it is super off-putting to the normal person. But you're not allowed to say that it's off-putting because, again, the mob rules the airwaves. All the media says peaceful protesters and all this other crap that's just everyone knows is a lie but isn't allowed to say, and
Yeah,
that's
and you
why it's so
certainly
important
can't
to say
say,
the truth.
yeah, you certainly can't say something like, I don't like Black Lives Matter, because then it makes you sound like, okay, Black lives don't matter. And then it's, yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it's
it's a
just
pretty manipulative
the
way of
whole thing is loaded,
forming an
right?
organization. Sorry, repeat that one more time.
The whole thing is loaded, and it's designed to be loaded. Like that's leftists are surprisingly good at this whole framing the argument and loaded questions and loaded term type things. Where it's like uh, things like Black Lives Matter is a good example. How they won't call a baby, they'll call a baby a fetus. Like they
Oh yeah,
do a really good job of manipulating language to control how they think. Like my truth, like truth doesn't have an objective reality kind of thing. Like they just do these subtle little things to shape. It's like the whole Orwell thing of control people's language and then you can control their minds. And they do a really good job of that. Um,
yeah.
Almost on an instinctual level. It's so pervasive and so maybe there's someone that kind of has figured out some of this stuff, but it almost seems like it's either done on a spiritual level or it's some kind of instinctual thing with that leftist ideology that makes it so they just kind of do these things. It's weird. But then
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. No, I hear what you're saying, and my big. So, I believe you're a Catholic. Is that correct? Is that appropriate to say?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I actually really liked going to church for a very long time. I got a lot out of it, and as we've said before, like I had a big problem with I have a big problem with the new Pope that we have, or
Yeah,
the
he's
Pope that
real
we
shitty.
currently have, and I had a big problem with the child stuff that came out. That made me actually at first I was very hopeful. I thought, okay, great, this is a perfect time for the Pope to step up as a man, as a Pope, as the leader of the Catholic world. um, and we're gonna root this all out, and we're never gonna have this problem again. Maybe we'll even have marriage and all that in the church again. I'd be very very supportive of that. However, it didn't happen, so I left the Catholic Church, which has been actually quite a weight on me. However, we can get into that in a minute, but I think that people borderline need, as a whole, not on an individual basis, but people need to have faith in something that is greater than them. They need to have a religion. And to me, a lot of this stuff seems to be very religious based almost. Like it's faith, it's original sin. It's,
Yeah, you can't remove
yeah,
religion. If you remove religion, it creates a vacuum, and you fill it with something. State like the ideology of the state, communism, uh,
cults, Scientology.
cults, Scientology, race theory, like just all this like there's tons and tons of stuff that people like basically fill that void with, and that's why it is important to have these things.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. Oh man, I don't know. So my big thing is, I mean, I know you believe in God. I believe in God. I would go as far to say as I know that God does exist. And I
Isn't that
take
a big
this
change?
from, say it again.
So isn't that a bit of a change?
Um, kind of. I don't know, dude. There's been parts of my life where I've just been kind of angry and going through things, and I don't know. Anyway, I
It's an
digress.
ebb and flow. I get it.
Yeah, my point is that there's just been enough things that have happened to me that I do believe that there is a greater power, and by believe I would say I know that there is a greater power, and just from an engineering perspective, right? There's nothing that you haven't looked at in your life that hasn't been designed,
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
yeah, like a car. Okay, fine, that's a really really cool piece of machinery, and human beings are crazy, right? I mean, we're a bunch of chimps that figured out how to make a car that is 30% efficient, or an engine that's 30% efficient, and we think we're hot shit. That's pretty much the extent of human accomplishment. I mean, I know I'm being hyperbolic.
Yeah. We have made something that's 99% efficient, and it's
What are you
incandescent
talking about?
bulb.
Huh. Okay. Well,
It is
there you have it.
99% efficient at creating heat, and the other 1% creates light.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, anyway, with that being said, my point is that everything really has been designed. I think the human being has been designed. The dog, the tree, the automobile, the freaking cell phone, the little supercomputer that we keep in our pockets at all times.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and a lot of these inventions that human beings have made have been, they're completely dependent on previous inventions, and B, generally they're not that crazy. Like the freaking plow, right? We went from having an all cast plow to a forged plow, and that was a real big deal. Um,
It's the little
anyways,
things.
yeah, no, I mean, human beings are naturally religious. I think God definitely exists. And I would say anyone that disagrees with that statement is probably misinformed or hasn't thought it through totally, or is angry like I was.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest issues facing religion is like the Pharisees and the Churchians that are in like the churches. Like so many of the churches are so I shouldn't say so many. Basically all the churches, at least in America, are like milk toast and don't actually like preach what is in the Bible kind of thing, and just it's supposed to be like a feel good session, and like do as thou wilt, which is literally the words of the devil. Like it's it's insane. So like when people see that, they can see like you're just a hypocrite kind of thing, and they bail, and they should bail because it's like it's not actually offering them what they claim to be offering them. But that doesn't mean just because it's a failing on the human side, because we're fallen beings, doesn't mean that um, you know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. Like the uh, the teachings and stuff like that in there are useful and true uh, things that can be used in your daily life. And that's one of the great things about the Bible is it's there's lessons for it that are applicable to you on a daily basis, and so that makes it very helpful.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah, no, I actually and about you, I really like the Stoic teachings. I really like the Buddhist teachings.
yeah, all that philosophical
Um,
stuff is very useful. Like,
oh, very much.
I actually just watched. Have you watched The Last Avatar before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So it's uh,
Most of it.
yeah. Well, just to kind of touch on like the Confucian thing, like you have Uncle I. For those who haven't seen it, Uncle Iroh is this like old guy who's kind of he's like the sage wisdom guy, and he has like phrases in there that are basically Confucian teachings that are useful all over the place. Of just like be mindful of things. Not everything's a rush. Uh, you know, slow down and smell the roses. Kind of like I can't even think of a line from it, but it's you know and that's those core ideas are you see that in all the different religions and all the different philosophical um, teachings because they're true. They're like truisms. It's something that's applicable and helpful in your life for living a better life. Um, I guess that runs into the question of, well, if they're all true, then how do you distinguish that this one is the truest one? And quite frankly, I don't have a great answer for you on that one. Um,
Yeah,
I'll have
yeah,
to
no,
think
I
on that.
totally agree with you. And my other, so one of my things about religion, and I think this is something we're gonna probably disagree about. Um, I don't know. My big concern with religion, so I don't know a good way to say this. I'm just gonna say it. Is it really is dependent on which part of the earth you're born onto, right? I didn't choose to be born into Seattle, Washington, and you didn't choose to be born into Minnesota. And had I been born into Iran or I don't know Somalia or something like that, there's a very good chance, or China or Japan, Korea, there's a very good chance that my religion would be very different than it is.
Yes.
And I don't know, I probably would have been a good Muslim or a good Jew or a good Hindi or a good Sikh, whatever the hell I would have been born into. I mean, I'm sure it would be very different and I would have a lot of very different outlooks, as well as different genetic memories and all that. But
Yeah.
no, my big concern is that things need to be universal. Something is either true or it's not. Things are not situational. Um, I would say that is correct. That's why I'm a big fan of the non-aggression principle, because it is universal and it can be applied to any situation. Self-defense is okay, but going and committing violence against someone is generally not.
Okay. When do you decide to
Uh,
start
s-
that whole
mm,
process?
Sorry, could you refine your question a bit?
1 second. Okay. So, um, like territory expansion and warfare is like the nature of things, right? So,
It has been for all of human history.
yeah.
That's correct.
So, okay. So you came in with your people and you conquered this area and you took it and na- and so at some point, right? Like, okay, let's just do the classic of like America and the Indians, right? We came in, we conquered, we kicked all the Indians off their land, right? And they can say it's stolen land, and you know what? They're right. We came in and we stole it. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah, but they were also warring against each other. They had slaves. I mean, they
yeah,
were they
I'm
were
not like
valid too. But yeah,
yeah, but at the end of the day, we came in, we came, we caught, we saw, we conquered, right?
correct.
Okay, so now we say, okay, well now we have the non-aggression principle, and you don't have any way of getting your land back.
Mm.
It's like, okay, well you were able to come in here with violence and take stuff with force. Why are we not allowed that option?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, that's a pretty good. God damn it, Andrew. Um,
That's
okay,
what I'm here for.
that's a pretty good point. I like that point. Okay, so here's my thing. So the Irish, I've got a little bit of Irish in me, not a whole lot of Irish, right? The Irish were treated very poorly by the English or the English Empire for a very long time. The Irish were there was a lot of Irish slaves back in the day too, and I would not suggest that it is proper for the Irish to uprise and demand retribution from England. Although if they wanted to annex themselves from the English, then I would suggest that that would be okay. Maximum freedom. I always lean towards that, or at least I try to. I would suggest that things that happened. I mean, if something bad happened to your grandfather or your grandfather's grandfather or beyond that, I would not suggest that it is okay to go and get retribution for something that did not happen within living memory.
So as long as we continue to war back and forth, it's fine.
No, what I'm suggesting is that the hatchet needs to be buried eventually, and I would suggest that anyone who goes out to get retribution or to get revenge should dig a grave for two.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that, um, but here's the way I see it. It's you are allowed to have your land and keep your land as long as you can defend it, right? You don't have any like if you can't defend it, it's not really yours, right? Like the only hold up, I had a thought on this the other day. It
Oh,
was
absolutely, go for it.
private. Oh, that's what it was. Private property is only enforceable by force, right? So if you're basically what has basically been decided is on this little plot of land, I can use force to stake my claim. That's kind of a micro uh, explanation of like warfare, right? We have this territory and we have decided that we're going to use force to enforce this territory. Now, if someone comes in and says, well, now I'm going to use force to enforce this territory, and then they say no and they fight about it, and then the person that owned it previously loses, now it's that person. Like, you only get to keep your land as long as you're willing to defend it. And as long as and it's basically just a tacit thing. It says like I'm I'm willing to fight for this territory, and maybe that border of that territory changes over time, and it's like well now I'm willing to defend and fight for all of this territory, and then maybe there's a cross claim where it's like no that was supposed to be mine, and then we have a war over it. Like that's kind of how it all works out. So like in that framework, which I guess I kind of box you in with how I set up the framework, but like how do you not have violence?
Well, I would say, all right, so I actually do have an answer for this. So, two things. Hear me out for a second because it does make my point. So, with chimps, what I have heard, I have not done my own research, so I apologize for the weak argument on my end, is that chimps, there will be different leaders, right? And the leaders that rule through violence generally get overthrown more than other chimps. The chimps that have more compassion towards other chimps and are not violent leaders tend to rest easy on their throne. Um, so I would suggest that violence only begets more violence, and that you cannot use violence to enforce things unless you want to die by the sword. If I were to, like, let's say I really want your property, I love Andrew's property, and maybe Andrew just won't give me the property, right? Maybe that just won't happen. But I really want it. I drive a boatload of money to your house, or I write you a big fat check, and I say, Andrew, this check is yours. I just want the deed to your house. I love it, or I don't know, whatever. Maybe I want your PS or something. Then we can do it through that way. But if I was to go, I don't know, like do something god awful to someone, like go do a home invasion and say, nope, this is my house now, I'm kicking you out, society wouldn't stand up for that, especially if you are a good standing member of society. Because people are going to say, okay, well, this Nate guy is totally okay with using violence to get what he wants. And since he set his own standards, we can use violence to kick him out of our community or out of that house. Um, I don't know, like for example, I'm sure you have a bunch of old people in your family that live by themselves. Like, my grandmother, she lives by herself and she really can't protect her property, but I don't know, she has people in the family that would help her protect her property if it came to it. And I do believe that you do not own something unless you can defend it. That is self-evident because if I can take something and you can't defend it, then it is mine.
Yeah, I guess like the point is, it's like all of the systems that we have built in place are to kind of set up the idea that okay, so like to go back to like the Graham example, right? Like, she's gonna have some people that are gonna help her defend her stuff, right? And it's generally how it works. Like, you're gonna have a community that helps you out with various things, because not everyone's gonna be able to build up their whole thing. But that's
Yeah.
like basically how the whole judicial system's built, right? We have these other means of um, amicably figuring out things because we understand that the baseline thing is like what you said, where it's just violence constantly and people taking stuff violently from each other all the time. And it functions like, and I get this is where kind of like where the non-aggression principle comes in. It's like, okay, we have this baseline of violence. So like, but I think that's the thing is it's like we understand that it will come to this if we can't resolve things up here. So like, we have this disagreement, and let's say we have a disagreement about a piece of property, and it comes to, we take it to court kind of thing, and then, you know, uh, they get, they side with me, but you decide that you don't like the ruling, and therefore you're not gonna listen to the ruling. Well, at that point, violence gets added into the equation, where they forcefully remove you kind of thing. So it's like, there's just like a veneer that we don't use violence just because everyone understands that if you aren't willing to follow the rules that we set out in this framework, violence will be used against you. And
Yes.
and there's no other way to have it be done at a at a certain level, it's going to happen.
Okay. All right. Well, one sec. So maybe this is just very ignorant of me and very, maybe this is just a pipe dream. But I think so, and I'm not trying to virtue signal. I'm not trying to take a moral high ground or anything like that. Not trying to talk nonsense. But I think people are mostly good, and left to their own devices, people will generally do the right thing if they have the correct moral foundation, such as Christianity. Um, I don't think we need
Is that
we need
people
a t-
being left to their own thing at that point though? Like, that's a lot of factors in there. Like,
w-
people are good
okay.
if they follow Christianity. Like, that's pretty specific.
Well, all right, so one, I'm talking from my own experience. Maybe people would be great if they were left to Judaism or Islam, but I'm talking from my own personal experience. So I can suggest through Christianity that people would be mostly good if they followed that, or if they followed a society which did subscribe to those morals. And like you said before, like we both said, you cannot take religion or faith out of a human society. I believe we agreed on that.
Uh, yes, yeah, yeah. Sorry, like, I don't know what
Yep.
the heck is going on in my house, but I'm muting and unmuting, so I might be delayed on a response.
Okay, you're totally fine. Totally fine. With that being said, I mean, violence does happen, right? And force sometimes is necessary. I think these are just self-evident facts of the human condition. But especially in modern day, violence is extremely rare, and it's just not necessary in most situations.
The mobs would like to disagree with you.
I mean, yeah, there are mobs, and they would very much like to disagree with me, and actually, actually, that's gotten me quite a bit away from supporting law enforcement recently because the law enforcement is just the arm of the state that goes and enforces its own viewpoint on its citizens. And it doesn't matter if I'm right. It doesn't matter if I'm just protecting my own property. They're going to come and they're going to arrest me because politics. That would
Yeah,
literally be a
but
political
it's
prisoner.
not that you're against law enforcement because they're not actually enforcing the law. If they were actually doing their job, then everything would be fine. But it's because they're not allowed to do their job that things aren't functioning.
It's because they're doing their job in reverse.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways, what I'm trying to say, one sec, let me gather this. What I'm trying to say is I don't think that force is generally necessary, but we are addicted to force and we are addicted to violence in our society. I would argue that that is the same for every human society that's ever existed, but I think we can get away from that. We've made crazy advancements in society for the last 1,000 years, and to suggest that we are at our pinnacle, I think, would be foolish. Um, my big problem is that all laws, and maybe you disagree with me on this, but I don't think that it is possible to. Laws are rules that we enforce through violence. For example, if I were to I don't know, get zapped by a red light camera or something like that, and they send me a fine. Okay, right. I shouldn't be driving through a red light. That's bad. But I get zapped by it, and they give me a fine. Well, what happens if I don't pay that fine? What happens if I don't choose to show up to court? Well, they're going to send guys with guns over to my house to take me away and put me in a frickin' box if I refuse to cooperate. With law, there's always a gun in a room, and I don't think that it actually I know that doesn't adhere to the non-aggression principle, and I think it is. I don't know, but laws are sometimes necessary. Force is sometimes necessary. Um, you need to be able to protect your society. You do need to have rules. Societies must have rules to function. But I don't know, if you're not hurting anyone else and you're not doing anything that treads on anyone else, I don't think there should be any laws for that. For example, if you wanted to smoke pot, God forbid, I would suggest that you shouldn't have to pay a fine and you shouldn't have to go to jail. I would say that whatever you want to do, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, is okay to do.
Yeah, we could parse down a lot of a lot of this stuff is pretty petty and it's almost like a reason just to or not a reason, but like a way to remove a certain segment of the population from uh from like the labor pool kind of thing and or yeah, basically if we
Yeah,
ran
just go
things
get the
like we did
gulags.
in like Victorian times, right? Like we where they like didn't have prisons and everything was like hangings. Um,
Sure.
like maybe like when things kind of go south or if like the U.S. collapses and stuff like that, like what I think might end up coming back as like there will be a lot less laws that you can break, but then if you do break a law, the there will be like two things that'll happen. Either you'll be executed or you'll be banished. Right? So if it's like a more minor crime, you might just be kicked out. Like let's say stealing or something like that. Um, you're just kicked out of the village. You're not allowed to come back. Things like that. And then
Okay.
if you do something like murder, then you're killed because you can't just banish someone because then you risk them going to the next village and doing that atrocity again. Um, where yeah, sure they might go to the next village and they might steal again or whatever, but like it's not as big of a deal. Like that execute. Well, I don't know. They used to just execute people for things like that, but it seems too far.
The crime needs to meet the yeah the punishment needs to be fit to the crime. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand.
So, but yeah, you're right. Though we have way too many. Our fingers are in too many things at this point. But I don't know.
Yeah, I would argue that that's something that the vast majority of Americans would agree on.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Um. Alrighty.
All right. Do we have anything else we want to talk about here?
Um. Nah, I think I'm good. Uh, plus, I don't know, my family decided to start banging around on stuff, so, uh,
They do that.
yep. So, yeah, I'm cool to wrap here if you're good, unless
Yeah,
you had
I'm
another
good to
topic
wrap
you
here
want to
too.
hit.
Um, no, not too much. I think we covered quite a bit today. Kind of a wide net we cast today.
Alrighty. Um, thank you everybody that's listening. Um, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, we stream this on Saturdays sometimes.
We're going to
Um,
be more consistent going forward.
yeah, at noon Central Standard Time on DLive. It'll be linked down in the description, and I will announce it on Social Galactic. Also, like, share, subscribe, um, and comment. If there's topics you want us to cover in a future episode, leave a comment, and we will see if we can get to it. It might be something that's just kind of out of our expertise, or we haven't looked into much. So maybe it'll be something that we aren't able to cover. But yeah, um, I think that covers a lot of it, or all of it. Anyway, thank you very much. I've been Andrew,
I've been Nate,
and this has
and this
been
is
the Andrew and Nate podcast.
have a good week, everyone.